I have had a long history with the Hamas Theater when Miss Rosetta Lenoir, I believe, was the executive director. One thing I think that's good to mention on your behalf, your organization, is that the Broadway show Bubbling Brown Sugar first began with the Hamas Theater. So you're doing something with Hip Hop Cinderella. How did that go?
That launched in December, and we were able to extend that show twice, and we got a great review in the New York Times, so that was very exciting.
Now, was that inspired by Lin-Manuel? And I did go to see that play. I had to go. All this hoopla. I said, let me go see how they're staging this. How is hip-hop going to work? You know, but people loved it.
He's so wonderful with how he uses hip-hop in musicals.
Welcome tonight, everyone, to Odds and Ends Life, Entertainment, Theater, and the Arts. I am Andrew Joseph Kozlowski, and with me is my good friend, world-class musician, music producer, and co-host, Mr. Cool himself, Mr. Clyde Ballard. Folks, we have a very special guest tonight. Our special guest is Donna Trinkoff from the Hamas Musical Theater. This organization is devoted to the creation, development, and professional production of new American musicals, the celebration of equity and minority perspectives, and the emergence of the new artistic talent, along with the training and encouragement of inner-city young people. Founded in 1968 by the acclaimed actor Rosette Lenoir, Hamas means you love in Latin. Remains true to Lenoir's vision of color and culture-blind theater company. Hamas is dedicated to producing new musical theater works from a variety of cultural viewpoints. The company also offers professional training to artists and builds new audiences through its educational outreach programs. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very happy to have with us tonight Donna Trinkoff.
Welcome to Odds and Ends, Miss Donna Trinkoff. Man, I've been waiting for this to happen for a long time, you know. I know you're very busy with the Hamas Theater, and as you know, I have had a long history with the Hamas Theater when Miss Rosetta Lenoir, I believe, was the executive director. I was kind of like the principal bassist. I played almost all the shows, Helen and Helena Blavatsky. We were doing all kind of shows. It was wonderful. I learned a lot from working there. I was working there so much, she gave me a bank card that I could use to cash the checks from the Hamas. I'd go to the bank and just show the card, you know. Now, back then, it was on 104th and 5th Avenue in what was called Boys Harbor. Where is it located now that you're the director?
Well, we've been in a couple of places since then, but right now we are on the top of the August Wilson Theater at 257 West 52nd Street.
Beautiful.
We have a beautiful office there. We don't have the lovely theater that, you know, was up on 104th Street.
Right.
But back when I got started, well, a little after I got started in 92, the parameters for the rent and everything changed, and it became very prohibitively expensive. So Eric Krebs said, I'm going to bring the theater down to the John Houseman Center on 42nd Street and give you an office and give Hamas an office so that you guys can continue. Yeah. So he kind of rescued the company back then.
Oh, that's good. So what do you do when you're going to actually do your theatrical productions? Where do you host them?
That's a good question. We have for the last 3 years been doing a festival and our main stage shows at the Art New York Theater, the new Art New York Theater on West 53rd 3rd Street. And honestly, I've worked in just about every theater in New York City over these last 25 years, many of which are, sad to say, demise, gone, which is...
Because of the pandemic, you're saying?
No, because of economics, because people sold the property to build residential. There's a whole slew of reasons, but we've lost a lot of off-Broadway theaters in the last 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I think that's good to mention on your behalf, your organization, is that the Broadway show, Bubbling Brown Sugar, first began with the Amos Theater when it was on 104th Street. And that show went on to be a Broadway hit. It toured Europe. And it featured great performances by Avon Long and Vivian Reed, who did a jaw-dropping, show-stopping rendition of Sweet Georgia Brown.
Yeah, she was
incredible.
Harlem, the Lafayette, you and me, everybody. Spread the word. Georgia Brown will tear up this town. Oh, gal Maid has got a shade on. Sweet Georgia Brown. 2 left feet, but oh so neat hands. Sweet Georgia Brown. They all sigh and wanna die for Sweet Georgia Brown. I'll tell you just why. You know I don't lie, not much. It's been said she knocks 'em dead when she lands in town. Since she came, why, it's a shame how she cools 'em down. Fellas that she can't get, or fellas that she ain't met. Georgia named her, Georgia claimed her, Sweet Georgia Brown.
And in the band, you had a bass player, Mr. Arvell Shaw, who was the bass player for Louis Armstrong.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He was the man that Louis Armstrong had chose to play with him. Because Louis Armstrong had to play at an army base one time, I think, in Oklahoma, and there was no bass player. So they grabbed Arvell and told him, listen, you got to learn how to play acoustic bass, because he played tuba and some other stuff. He got it together, and Mr. Armstrong loved him and he toured with him all those years.
Been rolling. Here's our bass man, Arvell Shaw, coming up with a solo play this time.
Thank you very much, Louis. I'd like to do a tune that I had the pleasure of recording with Louis Armstrong on an album called Satchmore Symphony Hall, made in Boston in 1947. How High the Moon.
So that's some great history.
Oh, I didn't know that connection because I've always loved Louis Armstrong.
Oh, yeah, no.
Just always. And actually, Rosetta's favorite song was his rendition of What a Wonderful World.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Great.
And we closed our 50th anniversary celebration with everybody singing that song, led by Miss Lillias White, who we mentioned
beautiful.
earlier.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah. And we actually had her on Odds and Ends, and we did an episode maybe 4 months ago. So she's wonderful to work with. And of course, I used to play for her as a bass player many years ago.
Oh,
And her brother Willie White. Brother Willie White is a great percussionist here in New York.
that's interesting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that either.
So, what are some of the productions that you've been doing now at the Amos Theater? I mean, I saw you doing something with Hip Hop Cinderella. How did that go?
That went great. So once the pandemic hit, let me back up just a little bit.
Okay.
We did a main stage show last year of a musical called Romeo and Bernadette.
I like that.
It opened in the beginning of January, and we played through mid-February, and then it was picked up for a commercial run, and we were all set to move to the Acorn Theater, to a 199-seat theater on Theater Row. And on March 12th, as we all know, we had Eric Krebs and I had to go in. The cast was mic'd up. They were ready to begin tech, and we had to shut it down. So that was a great disappointment to everybody. And it was the first show in a number of years that had been, moving on to a commercial production. So, and it was just a joyous production. So after the pandemic hit and everything shut down, we kind of quickly rejiggered everything and started working online. We were supposed to be doing, in fact, that's when I met you, Clyde. You had come to see the Rosetta Lenoir Musical Theater Academy.
Right.
When we were down at the Hudson Guild Theater.
That's right.
And so
that was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. It's a wonderful program, and the teenagers are just so delightful. But they were supposed to go back to the Hudson Theater in May and do Into the Woods.
Oh, yeah.
So
Sondheim, right?
Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods, and they had completely rehearsed and staged the entire first act.
Oh, boy.
So we went online with them. We kind of oriented ourselves, went online with them, and we recorded a 17-minute compilation of the show with all of the teens recording themselves at home and outdoors.
Is it only audio, or is it video and audio?
Oh, no, it was a video
and
an audio,
If you have picked them out again in 2 hours' time, you shall go to the ball with us.
I let him go. I didn't know he'd stolen my beans. I was watching him crawl back over the wall when bang, crash, and the lightning flash. And that's another story. Never mind.
So it's on our website, as a matter of fact, at amasmusical.org. So you can see it. But based on that, I had been talking with David Kaufman, who is a producer I've worked with in the past. I did 2 Latin shows with him, Four Guys Named Jose, which also went off Broadway, and also a show called Latin Heat that was directed by Maria Torres. And he started this new company called Hip Hop Musicals, and he had this Hip Hop Cinderella. So we worked on that, and then we brought 6 of our Academy alumni in, and we sent them all green screens, and we rehearsed in August, and we recorded the whole show. And we learned a lot doing it, but it takes place in outer space, so we couldn't have them, filming in front of their closets.
No, right.
Anyway, that launched in December, and we were able to extend that show twice, and we got a great review in the New York Times. So that was very exciting.
Now, was that inspired by Lin-Manuel? Hamlet?
Oh, no.
Okay.
But, it was informed by him, of course, because he's so wonderful with how he uses hip hop in musicals.
Yes. And I did go to see that play. I had to go. All this hoopla. I said, let me go see how they're staging this. How is hip hop going to work? But people loved it. Although I would say this, though, to add something before I cut you off, I believe that most of the people who have seen the show, Hamilton, I bet you most of them don't even own any hip hop CDs, or probably never even ingested hip hop before. But for some reason, the way it was staged, they accepted it,
Well, sometimes people don't know what they like until they hear it. So I knew a woman, a middle-aged woman, who said to me, I don't like hip hop, but I loved the show. She loved the
Interesting.
show.
Yes.
But interestingly enough, what she also said to me was the only thing I didn't understand, this was several years ago, the only thing I didn't understand was the casting. She said the founding fathers weren't Black.
Right.
And I said to her, and they didn't sing either.
Right. Or
So
dance. Yeah.
I think it kind of went over her head, but I think in terms of why he did the casting the way he did and how it opened up Rosetta's vision for non-traditional casting and for, you know, the idea that you can play a role and you don't have to look or be that person. You just have to be a good performer.
Of course.
Right?
That's right. Now, do you think there's any chance for Romeo? You call it Romeo and Bernadette?
Yeah.
Is there any chance for that to be presented once the pandemic is over?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe. We're all kind of waiting to see. I mean, we took a big hit having gotten everything together and ready to go off Broadway. But, you know, hope springs eternal.
Well, I'm hopeful. Also, has there been original music written for that production?
Well, that production was written by Mark Saltzman, both the lyrics and the book. And he took traditional and pop Italian music, some from opera, and he fit the lyrics to the music. So it's a very varied score. It's an absolutely charming show, and it made people very happy to see it. I mean, the conceit was that Romeo didn't die, and he travels 400 years into the future to Brooklyn in the 1960s, where he falls in love with Bernadette, who he thinks is Juliet, and she's the daughter of a mafia don. And, you know, mirth ensues, you know.
Right.
And it was a lot of
totally
fun
different
to work
twist on a Shakespearean theme.
Yes.
I scar, and then I'm boom in love once more.
The show is so fantastic. It's funny, it's smart, it's about Brooklyn, it's about Verona. Go see it.
It's surprising and fun and original. Everyone is so talented.
The show is so funny. Really, really hilarious.
Yeah, it was fun to get, like, what would happen if Romeo didn't die.
If you flee, I will die here on this cursed spot. Juliet.
Don't you get I ain't your freaking Juliet?
No, no la famille. Okay, all right. No, no la famille. Take out some goon in a backstreet saloon, but no, no la famille.
Well, you were asking me about other productions. Some years ago, before that, we had done another adaptation of a Shakespeare called Lone Star Love, or The Merry Wives of Windsor, which was based on, and it was basically a country western show with music by the Red Clay Ramblers.
Ooh.
And that one was also fantastically fun. It was a big show, really big show. And we did that at the John Houseman, and we started that there, and then we flipped it into a commercial production for a while there.
So is it easy for you to locate a theater that would let you stage a production? How does that work? You just call around and ask, will someone, or do you have to actually rent the theater yourselves?
Oh, no, we rent the theater. We rent the theaters. And in the case of the Art New York, which has been a lovely home to us for the last few years, we basically apply, and they have a subsidy program. And the theater was built for the Art New York companies who don't have their own spaces. So that's worked out very nicely.
But I mean, you have to apply, I guess, far in advance in order to reserve the space when you need it, right?
Yes.
Very interesting.
That's basically the world of nonprofit theater. Even for grants and such, you apply for a grant and then it shows up, 6 to 8 months later.
Mm-hmm. So the Amos Theater survives mainly from grants and funding.
Yes.
And
mainly
some private philanthropists as well.
Oh, yes. That we rely a lot on individual donors, and we get state and city. Sometimes we get the NEA funding and foundations. And I have to say that during this last year, they have been remarkably generous and compassionate, knowing
And supportive.
Knowing what everybody's up against.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think theater, Broadway, music, art, and the arts in general are basically an intrinsic part of New York City. Without those counterparts, I don't think New York is New York. Imagine New York with no Broadway, with no Lincoln Center. I mean,
Then it would be Des Moines.
right. I was just thinking Des Moines, Iowa, you know? Now, your background, were you actually an actress yourself first or a director yourself?
I did. I started as a musical theater actress. I studied theater at university at SUNY Binghamton, and I spent a semester at the National Theater Institute at the Eugene O'Neill Center, which was a wonderful experience.
Beautiful.
And then I spent a year in England studying a kind of one-year postgraduate program.
Interesting. Are you familiar with this book, The 10 Commandments of Theater?
No.
Written by Anne Johnston Brown. Very interesting book. It's based on the Stanislavski method. The chapters are very interesting. Thou shalt accept criticism. Thou shalt really listen on stage. Thou shalt respect the history of the theater. Thou shalt warm up properly. Thou shalt read the script every day. Thou shalt thoroughly research thy character. It's like all these good tenets that actors should know. You should get it and check it out. It's fun. It's a fun read. But for you, you've lived this stuff. By Anne Johnston Brown, The 10 Commandments of
Anne
Theater.
Johnston Brown. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
I love those commandments.
Oh, yeah. Well, it teaches you, that you have to be able to accept criticism because everything you do is not going to be letter perfect in a director's eyes. So you have to learn to be pliable and to change things. Even though you think it's the greatest way to portray a character, the director might say it needs to be just shifted. So these are some of the disciplines. It's basically giving you tenets of discipline that actors should adopt, Now,
we use a lot of what you just said when we're working with our teens in the Rosetta Lenoir Academy.
Right.
To get them to, first, listening is a great, many people say that acting is listening.
Yes.
Right?
Right. Understanding thoroughly what you have to portray and being able to channel that character, which is amazing.
I don't lie, not much. It's been said she knocks some dead when she lands in town. Since she came, why, it's a shame how she cools them down. Fellas that she can't get